Let's run a poll. Let's run a poll. Who is the final boss of One Piece? Because it looked to me like 10% Shanks, 10 to 15% Shanks, 20 to 30% Blackbeard, and then about 50 to 60% Emu. But this is one of those questions that's very common, but also just very fun. I think the question's fun. I put Shanks, Blackbeard, and Emu. I should have put another. Sorry, I should have put other, but I go back and forth all the time. Though I do think that the implications of Emu's role lately has maybe shifted some people's ideas one way or another. Why the hell would it be Shanks? Chill. Let me clarify for anyone who's unfamiliar with my ideas on Shanks. The final boss doesn't necessarily mean an antagonist or a villain. Shanks, a prevalent idea, at least for me, is that Shanks could be like the final, the promise to Shanks could be fulfilled through a friendly fight. A friendly fight of, okay, let's fulfill the promise. Are you a proper pirate? Boom, pass on the hat, and now you're the king of the pirates. I'm the last thing standing in your way. A friendly fight. A friendly final boss, Some people seem to think that's a cool idea. I definitely do. The final test, yeah. My main reasoning is based on Whitebeard's last words. Whoever finds the treasure will trigger a war with the government. I can see Luffy and Blackbeard battling that out before we reach the ending with Emu. Post-big battle, having Shanks or Buggy, even as a friendly boss, is definitely up there. Yeah, Buggy's another one that I should have put in the poll. I should have put Buggy in the poll. Sorry about that. But let's see. Emu, 53% say Emu, 40% say Blackbeard, 7% say Shanks. Okay, slightly skewed for Emu. Which is more or less what I expected. I still, to this day, am not confident. Shanks has the biggest red flag of death above him. I still don't see it. I still don't see that. But we'll see. The build-up so far points to Emu, but Blackbeard is going to do some Blackbeard stuff and become the final villain somehow. He feels like a wild card he can play anytime he wants. I feel similarly with Buggy, but in a different role. One Piece is in a really interesting position wherein it could really play its cards with either of those two or Shanks. I think it's in a weird position where all three of them would feel like proper final bosses. All three of them, if executed well, would be fitting. Would anyone complain about Shanks versus Luffy being the final? Well, yes. Okay, sorry. People will complain, because people complain all the time about anything. But, you know what I mean. I would not complain about Luffy versus Shanks being the final boss. I would not complain about Luffy versus Blackbeard. Luffy versus Emu. All of them feel very fitting. Kobe was a popular pick in a Garp Roger way, but people have entirely abandoned that. Yeah, Kobe's going to be a counterpart to Luffy consistently. He has been and he'll continue to be, but in terms of final antag, I don't think so. That's just not who Kobe is, I don't think, to be an actual final boss in that way. And kind of similar with Buggy, although I could see him playing a huge role. I will only complain if Luffy doesn't fight Akainu. I think that I don't have strong thoughts on that one. I think that if he does, it could be amazing, but likewise, I think it could just be Sabo. And that would also be amazing, especially considering the different tones for Akainu we've gotten lately. I wonder how having Shanks' final boss would feel in terms of stakes and tension. The stakes would not be very high. The fight would be very different. The fight would be intimate. The fight would be just like, we'd be reading that, and we'd have tears in our eyes, and we'll be smiling. It's going to be that sort of fight. The stakes, if that is the final boss of One Piece, the stakes will come before that. This is the epilogue. That's the epilogue. That's the quintessential One Piece vibe, right? Akainu might be like the Blackbeard situation in Impel Down, where Luffy wants to fight him badly, but realizes there's more important things to do. Could you imagine, like a Well, the thing is, Akainu's so different too. Akainu's grown so much too. But imagine a world where there's a temptation to fight Akainu, and then Luffy just goes, no. Because he's the opposite of Ace. Or like, he's learned from Ace, and he embodies Ace in a different way. Or Sabo could do it in a way, but Sabo's kind of unhinged right now. Akainu is so chained that I feel a confrontation between Luffy and Akainu would just be Luffy obliterating him on a fundamental level. People would be so mad about, though. But Ichigo Aizen, right? Sometimes you just need a beatdown, right? Sometimes the narrative demands a beatdown. Although, like, I don't necessarily think that One Piece is heading towards that. But contextually, sometimes you do need a beatdown. Ichigo Aizen. Gon Pito. God damn. Like, that's the thing. People sometimes want every fight to be even and epic. But the narrative sometimes doesn't demand that. Garling? Garling has really cool symbolism, but I would honestly be underwhelmed if Garling was the final villain. Unless Oda pulls some really, really incredible stuff for him. Never say never, but as of right now, that doesn't feel right to me. I like doing a comparison between Buggy and Tom from Succession. Speaking of Buggy climbing his way to the empty throne,